Alright, so I'm going to show you how to make the animation pictured and kind of introduce you to the general workflow with this software, but it's not going to be like a complete handhold. I'm going to let you kind of do some of it yourself. I will also assume that you have a basic understanding of how multiple different frames or different pictures can come together to make an animation when played in sequence. One thing I realized I didn't make completely clear during the tutorial I just recorded, I'm now adding this a little bit later, is how the window manager works. So basically you can see these kind of like lines between the windows. If you can kind of drag them to change up the sizes, which is good. If you drag it all the way into the wall, it closes. If you drag it out of the wall, it opens again and gives you a canvas by default. If you want to change the type of a window, you can see this little triangle up here. You just click that, and a bunch of options should show up. And yeah, you just pick the one you want. So if I want like an overview of all the shapes in my scene, there are no shapes in my scene, so there's no overview, but yeah. And this little box here, that's to make something full screen. So if I were to click it on the canvas would become full screen. And so you can't then exit full screen. So basically that's only for like if you're sure you're done with all the other windows outside of that window and you just want to focus on that window now for the rest. But yeah, you can always just create more stuff. So for example, let's say I've been working with my my timeline and my shape editor, and now I decide, actually I'm done with that, now I just need to render my animation. I can hit full screen and I can make that a renderer, and yeah, so that's basically what a full screen button is for. And that's how the window manager works. So this is your general work area when you're loading up. This is what the user sees when at the time, and this is kind of the time, so you can click anywhere to go to that point in time. It's nothing right now at any points in time. You can use WASD to move around the canvas. So this is your current mode. So we're in draw mode right now, so you can kind of draw things. And that kind of just exists for all points in time. You can click it to edit it, and you can see that it kind of indicates the white bit is where it exists, and you can actually move where it exists. So if I bring that back, it now doesn't exist at earlier points in time, and the same for later points in time. So we actually don't need this shape, so I'm just going to delete it. Alright, there we go. And the other interesting thing is we've actually got this kind of fill mode. So if I turn that on, and then I draw a shape and I connect the start to the end. Okay, if I actually connect the start to the end, let me just undo that. So yeah, so if we connect the start to the end this time, there we go. I think I went slightly over the first time, but anyway, so the other thing, actually let me just remove this. So the other thing is we've got a thickness slider, so if I increase this, you'll see that the lines are, yeah, they kind of just reflect the thickness. I'll just undo that as well. And so basically we are going to want to kind of draw some water now. So I'm going to turn off the outline and pick a nice blue color for the water. And yeah, I'm just going to draw like a kind of first kind of frame, a little bit wavy, kind of watery kind of shape. And yeah, so this is going to be our water, and if I connect them up, it'll all fill in very nicely. However, we do have a slight problem. Like if I go into edit mode and I select, you can see it kind of exists for the whole animation when it's only really meant to be the first frame of the animation. You want the water to move over time. So I can just make it the first frame by moving it down a bit, but that would be very tedious to do kind of every single time. So I can actually activate temporary mode, and so now when I draw something, it automatically only lasts one frame, which, saves a lot of time. And yeah, so I can then just kind of go through each frame and just draw what the water does next. The slight problem though now is I can't see what it looked like in the last frame. So it'd be good if I could kind of see the last frame while I'm drawing the next frame. So if I go into the settings window and I turn on onion skins, I can actually see that now in a slightly less opacity kind of view. So now I can just draw the next frame based on the last frame. So yeah, so it's just, settings, and then onion skins, using the drop down to go into the settings. But yeah, now I'm away, so I can just kind of draw each frame, and then move on to the next frame after I'm done. And yeah, just kind of draw the next thing. And yeah, I'm just gonna have like a little kind of bobbing around of water, and I might actually cut this so that you can go off and do it yourself. So you're rejoining me. I've just kind of finished the wave, smashing down into the rest of the water. So I think I'll just do like one more little frame here, and yeah, and I can now kind of scrub through it. You can see it kind of looks. So you can scrub using your arrow keys, by the way, left arrow, right arrow. But yeah, it's kind of smashing into the thing. So what would be good now would be to add some kind of droplets when it kind of smashes down. So if I just kind of like find the frame where it smashes down, like right there, I can then go and do some little droplets. So you can actually just tap it on the draw mode and it'll just make a little circle. And so that's kind of exactly what I want here. So yeah, if I just kind of draw a couple dots around where it smashed down, I might do some smaller droplets and kind of just dot them around the place. And no one frame has to look perfect. It just has to all look cohesive together. So it doesn't matter that this doesn't really look like much right now, but when you see it in an animation, it'll look like something. And yeah, and we'll just have gravity work its stuff. Draw the next frame drops slightly below where they were before. And yeah, this should look fine. And yep, done with the droplets, and that's what it looks like. And I've got kind of a finished wave kind of going. So yeah, so I'm kind of done with the water now. One thing is that I haven't really used up the whole 10 seconds that I was given by default, and I'm probably not going to use up the whole 10 seconds I was given. So I actually, let me just save the project. Very important, you always save when you make progress. And then I'm going to take the animation end time, which is in the settings window again, and I'm going to make that maybe 4 seconds or something, just something where I'm actually going to finish it. The other thing I'm going to do is I am going to organize my project. That's the kind of thing that future you will really thank you for. So if I go to the overview window now, you can see I've got all of these polygons kind of all over the place. They're all like different bits of water at different times. And some of them are droplets as well. So it'd be good to kind of have them all in one directory. And I've got directories implemented in my software, which is great. So I'd shift click. So click the top, shift click button to click all of them. And you can actually see them all on the timeline here. There's lots of them. And yeah, I'm going to hit new directory, and they're all in a new directory now. And let's name that something like, like water or something. And there you go. That's all organized now. Kind of. So I'm just going to do my surfer guy now. So I'm going to go back into persistent, because I'm going to want my surfer guy to exist throughout the whole animation. And I'm going to start with his surfboard. So we're going to make that like a kind of green color. Well, I mean, you can do whatever color you want. I'm not your boss. But yeah, so I am going to make the thickness low, because I want him to be quite small, because I'm not going to draw him well, so he better not take up much of the screen. So yeah, so that's going to be his surfboard. And I might actually move that down slightly, just so I have space to draw him. And yeah, I'm just going to go back into create mode, and just give him a kind of skin color for his skin, which that makes sense. If I can just get that right. There we go. And I'll just, give him some legs. Actually, this is going to look horrendous. Yeah. Should I go with that? I mean, let's use the features I have. Let's zoom in and make sure I draw this well. Yeah, let's not go with that. Let's delete that. Let's I'll just try this again. Bear with me for a second. Should we go with that? Sure, we'll go with that. Yeah, let's give him some red shorts, as your classic surfer wears. Some nice red shorts, something that's slightly thicker than his skin, so it kind of goes over him. Yeah, so by default, the thing you draw after goes in front of the things you drew before, which works most of the time, but some of the time it's you might want to change the order, which you can do in edit mode. But anyways, so now I want to go back to the skin color, but I've forgotten what skin color I used. So one thing I can do is if I go into the shape editor, I can then, if I select the color, I can then look at the color here, and I can use that to inform what color I am going to use. So I'll just put in what I just saw, and yeah, so that should be exactly the same color. If I just put it in, it should be exactly the same color as his legs, the rest of his body. Which, I mean, maybe isn't totally accurate, but you know, whatever. As long as it's a similar color, should be okay. Yeah. So there we go. Give him some kind of like outstretched hands. He's like balancing himself on his surfboard. And yeah, and so as you can see, it kind of went in front of his shorts because I drew it after. So if I just go to the shorts, move to front, fixes everything. Yeah. So now I'll just give him a little head. And should I go with that? Or maybe I'll just scale it down a little bit. You know, maybe that'll look okay. Yeah, alright. And then let's do his face. So, I mean, this is not going to be anything fancy. I'm going to give him a white dot for the outside of his eyes, and then a thinner white dot for his pupil. And going to look a bit like a fish, but you know, I think it'll suffice. This is going to be very small, by the way. So you might notice, okay, maybe that is a bit big for his mouth. Let me just... But yeah, you might notice that the lines kind of look quite jaggedy. It's because the compression is really kicking in at this scale. So, and so basically what that means is you're drawing quite small things. You probably don't have to worry about it. And if you do want to change how jaggedy, like you can see these are all just becoming straight lines. If you do want to change that, you can go into the settings window, and there is a setting for how much it simplifies the line. And yeah. Anyways, that's the surfer I'm going to go with. I'm going to make him one surfer, because right now he's like a bunch of different shapes. Well, after I've made him smaller. Yeah, that should be about right size. And then I'm just going to, you know, merge them all into one shape. Because you can see there's just so many of them down here, but it would not be realistic to animate this. Well, I mean, it could, but it's easier if I just merge it all into one shape. And there we go, and that's just, yeah, in edit mode. So you notice I've been kind of moving things around. But the interesting thing is you actually get this add to timeline button on your timeline whenever you do that. And that kind of adds it onto a timeline as a movement that happens. And it even smoothly moves between them, which is pretty good. So we can actually use that to animate our surfer guy. So if we just keep on going to the frame and then adding the movement to the timeline, he'll just smoothly go through all the movements. So let me just remove those from the timeline. You just, you know, you click the tween, you call them, and then clicking remove, and I'll just take it off the timeline. So it would be slightly tedious to constantly have to add it to the timeline throughout the whole animation. So in settings, there's actually this option to automatically add actions to the timeline. So now whenever I move it, it automatically gets added to the timeline. So as you can see, that tween is right there, and if we let the video go back and loop, you'll see it'll make that movement. So let me just remove that. So we're not going to want it at first. We're going to want to position him in his initial position at first. And so then, like, once you put him down in his initial position, rather, you can also add rotations and scales to the timeline. So yeah, it's pretty good. So automatically add things to the timeline, and then yeah, every time we move him, we can just move him along, rotate him a little for each frame, like that. Yep, maybe like there, and those are all automatically added to the timeline. So I can just kind of go through each frame, move him along, you know, surfing along the water, and yeah, it'll just keep on adding them to the timeline automatically, which is pretty nice. I can actually close the settings down a little, so, you know, give myself some space. Alright, so our surfer is just reaching kind of the crest of the wave. You can kind of see it all kind of tweens along quite smoothly. Yeah, you are going to want to make sure the tweens look like what you expect, and delete them if they don't look like what you expect. But yeah, so he's kind of reached the top of a wave, and now he's going to get whacked away, basically. And the interesting thing here is you can actually like rotate him, like do like a whole flip, and it will actually remember that you did a whole flip that time and do the whole flip. And if you do like 2 flips, it will remember you did 2 flips, and it'll add all that to a timeline. So if you watch it back now, you can see it does all the flipping around. which is, yeah, exactly what we wanted. And yeah, we're basically done now. I mean, we might add a few more frames of water just so it doesn't all go white at the end. But yeah, we've got our surfer flying off. So if we go, actually, let me just name this guy. It's generally good practice to use, concise, proper, sensible names for these kinds of things, just to keep everything organized and well done. So yeah, so once I'm done naming him, I'm just gonna get on with just a few more frames of water to kind of round out the animation. So I'm just gonna, do. So basically, because I want to kind of have it kind of rippling, and then give myself some time and just pad it out to the end, basically. But yeah. So let's just move on to the next frame here. Okay. I may have made a slight mistake here. This, I think, exists. I forgot to turn off persistent, because I used persistent to make the surfer, and I kept it on. So now I've got some permanent water. That's not catastrophic. I can just manually correct it, and just make sure that water is well done. Because, yeah, you can just manually do stuff when you forget, so it's not catastrophic. And, yeah, now I need to make sure that I put that on temporary. I'm totally the kind of guy to make that same mistake twice in a row. But yeah. So, yeah, let's just pad out the frames and have a finished animation. That'd be good. Alright, so yeah, this is what we got. Looking, half decent. It rounds out the whole 4 seconds. And yeah, so that's kind of what we got. Let's make sure that we save it, because we wouldn't want to lose this. And now we can actually render the animation to make it a video. So you can see if you go to a rendering window and just hit render animation, and that's literally it. You've rendered it. So yeah, so there you go. And you should now have your finished MP4 video for your animation, which is, yeah, decent. Oh, well, actually, I just realized we need to organize it a little bit, because I just added a bunch more water. So, so if I basically make this an overview window, you can see all that water. We can move that to a directory. We can put that into the water directory. So you select them, the directory, hit move to, and they're in there. Excellent. And so, yep, and so that's all now properly organized. And so there's actually one more thing I want to add to this. If I just go into the canvas now, back to the canvas to draw some more stuff. And if I go and I make a text thing, I can then type whatever I want in here. So I'm just going to make him say something goofy, slightly interesting, after he's been knocked down by the wave. And let's scale that up. And yeah. Oh, so that's been added to the timeline. Let me just remove that. That's just because I have automatically add things to the timeline, so it would have tweened it scaling up. Let me just turn that off, actually. And we'll turn off onion skins as well. We don't need those either, because we're just doing some finishing touches. So yeah, and that's all just in settings. You can always just turn things off when you don't need them. Yeah. So now let's actually go into the shape editor, because I want to change the font here, because Arial, it's not a good look for a surfer. So if I just go into the font and honestly, this is the most fun thing about, like, essay writing or whatever. It's just choosing a nice font. Comic New is okay. Should I go with? Yeah, I think that's a one. I think that's a kind of font a surfer would use to shout something. So yeah. So now let's just make sure that's only on for the relevant period of time. So after he's been knocked down, yeah, I think that's okay. I think that's an okay amount of time for it to be on. And then let's also just do a speech bubble. I'll just draw that in. Honestly, if it looks bad, that makes it funnier. That's what, that's the whole motto behind not being good at anything. Yeah, so, now I'm just going to make sure that it's kind of on for the same amount of time as the actual text. Actually, if I select from both, I can kind of line them up. Yeah, there we go. So those should be on for the same amount of time now. And, yeah, I think we are officially done with the whole thing. Excellent. So let's go ahead and save it. And yeah, so that's our animation. And we should probably render that again, actually. So let's go back into the rendering tab. Just give me a sec. Let me just, yep. And then let's render the animation. Actually, that is pretty fast. It's like faster than real time. So like that's pretty decent, if I do say so myself. Yeah. So we're done now. That is our animation. Thank you for watching, I guess.